Welcome back to Free to Pursue. My name is Hélène Massicotte, and I am bringing you another book review. This time, it's Deep Work by Cal Newport. I absolutely loved this book, so much so that I gave it 5 stars. Those 5-star ratings are few and far between. In fact, if I have not mentioned it yet in a video that you've viewed so far, I only will publish reviews that are 3 stars and above. I won't waste anyone's time with reviews that are very poor. You can see the full list of books that I have read on Free to Pursue. Current count is at over 300. And you can see all the titles on this wall of books I've created. Only the top books in that list, 3 stars and above, get a review. Back to the book. Now, 5 stars is a heck of a rating. And why did it get that kind of a rating? Well, Deep Work is a much, much better book than the previous book I had read by the same author, So Good They Can't Ignore You. That one left me cold, but this one is a thoughtful book, and even better, it is a book that quotes so many other books that I found riveting and very much worthwhile in their own right. So this book is a gateway drug of sorts to content in these other books. So I'm really, really excited to talk about this book. So, who is this book for? If we're feeling increasingly fragmented in our focus and attention, this book is definitely for us. And with all of the interruptions we experience moment to moment, we can definitely get something from Cal's book. Now, the readability is medium. It's at over 260 pages, and there's a lot of meat in the book, but it is really set up, divided, organized in a way that makes it a very reasonable read. I think you'll find that the author's thought process and recommendations come about in an orderly way, and the writing makes kind of his conclusions a little bit predictable, but in a good way. One of the things I really liked about Cal's writing style is that he really challenges us to look at our lives with a critical eye when it comes to distracted living. And it's a little bit of a reality check of sorts for the reader, because in this day and age, we are very few and far between who don't lead distracted lives. Now, paramount in this book is that he makes a very good argument that we can spend less time working based on a more focused approach to work. So the more focused we are, the deeper a dive we take in a given subject matter or given work product, the less time we need to spend doing it, which is a really powerful way to say the more focused and effective we are, the less time we need to spend at work. And that is a carrot that a lot of us would be very interested in going after. There is nothing I did not like about this book. The references, the resources this author uses to support his position, he does reference other books extremely effectively, and it also shows that he has done his research. He really quotes some key experts in the various areas that he wants to introduce to his readers, and to that I say kudos. Very, very well documented and supported conclusions throughout. So I called this book a gateway drug of sorts to a lot of other secondary themes that come out throughout the book. And fair enough. I mean, I think that when you have an author who walks the talk always very effective, but also makes compelling arguments toward a thesis of sorts. It really draws us in and wants us to better understand his position. In this case, he wants us to believe that harnessing an ability to do deep work gives us a more fulfilling and happy life. And I think he's absolutely right. The author makes 3 compelling arguments for us to develop our ability for deep work. One of them is that it is growing increasingly rare. We are becoming victims to distraction over and over again, whether they are externally driven or whether they are internally driven from boredom or curiosity, this itch that we always have to check our email, check social media, check anything else that might be a distraction, e-commerce, any of those things. He also states that deep work is increasingly valuable because so few people harness the ability to do so. The ability to learn hard things fast and apply them with success is just not something that many of us endeavor to do. And so when you find someone, if you're looking to hire, and you find someone with those skills, that person is highly sought after. I think that's great as far as seeing the connection between deep work and value for yourself and your profession, and also the apparent value you have for a potential employer, both to get hired and also to get retained and promoted. And most important still, deep work, thoughtful work, taking deep dives into certain areas of interest, different subject matter, is very fulfilling when it comes to living the good life. And when we invest in deep dives in different subject matters or projects or different endeavors that we want to undertake, we rarely, if ever, regret them. They add to our quality of life, they add to our sense of self, and they are always, well, I'll say nearly always, a successful or at least learned pursuit. In short, to Cal, the shallow life is an unhappy life. So how do we effectively do deep work? Well, there are 4 characteristics to it. Well, first, we need to work deeply. That kind of goes without saying. The second rule is we should embrace boredom. The third is that we need a reality check. We need to quit social media. And the fourth, we need to do what he calls drain the shallows. Let's take a look at each one of these in turn. Now, ironically, working deeply was a 60-page section that I left for the end because it just seemed so large compared to the other ones. But I do regret it. I think that section, the first of the 4, really helped kind of solidify the points in the subsequent sections. So if I were to reread the book, I would definitely not skip that section. I would read it just in the order the author intended. Now, not every book is that effective of building from one section to the next. Just depends how the book was written. But in this case, this book, I would definitely read linearly from the first to the last page. Now, how about that section's content? Cal suggests that deep work is taking a deep, concentrated dive into a work product of sorts. Whether it is studying, whether it is creating, it needs to be undivided, focused attention. And also, work of this nature is the most conducive to attaining our long-term goals. So I think they could be mutually exclusive. I mean, you could take a deep, concentrated dive in something that's not aligned with your long-term goals. Probably what work is aligned with your long-term goals, you'll feel more satisfied with, and it will make you feel like you're getting closer to what you ultimately want. And in order to be more effective in going after what you ultimately want, Cal suggests tracking your deep work sessions, tracking their frequency and tracking their duration. And having done this myself after reading the book, I could see how powerful it was, because I wasn't just tracking hours of work, I was tracking hours of deeply effective and meaningful work. And that is two very different things. Now, the author wrote a deep work habits blog post online, and I will definitely link that below in below this video, so you might want to check that out. In wrapping up the deep work section, the author also identifies that we are far, far more likely to be able to do deep work when we also engage in deep, calm, and relaxing activities. And that shallow activities, shallow rest, i.e. social media, is not a great way to have meaningful relaxation and calmness, that we should invest just as much in recharging, in doing meaningful, calm, non-busy work kind of activities, so that we recharge our batteries and can go back to another session of deep and meaningful work. And that's where he suggests embracing boredom. And what he means by that is to feel the boredom, experience this downtime without having the knee-jerk reaction to immediately fill the time with something, usually something relatively meaningless, but that takes some of our energy. And that recharging is extremely important, because his equation for being able to do deep work is as follows. The equation for the amount of high quality work produced is the amount of time spent doing this work times the level of focus we gave it. The more of those two ingredients we have, the better the high quality work we will have produced. Seems straightforward, but the inputs aren't necessarily that easy. We really have to intend and focus on making sure that each one of them happens. Not only spending the time, but spending the time in a quality manner. And quality really means eschewing social media. You don't find people who are deep thinkers and high producers spending a huge amount of time on social media. They're too busy involved in deep work or planning for deep work or rejuvenating themselves between deep work sessions. They are much more interested in connecting in meaningful conversation with other people or having quiet time than they are engaging in the shallows where most of us live for much of our time. You can see more on Cal's view of our need to quit social media in a TED Talk that he delivered in 2016. I will link that talk down in the description box below. Now, if you'll recall, the fourth point was to drain the shallows. And in this, he invites us to challenge everything. Any work that is not deep work in nature, we should question. We should either refuse to do it, or delegate it back to the person asking, or delegate it to someone else. Very much so, the shallow work that is asked of us is very often not required of us. We do not have to be the person fulfilling that request. It can be a request of convenience from another person, and very often we can say yes because we want the distraction. We really need to question every single request we get. And if it is not for the benefit of deep work, we should really try to bounce it off to someone else or simply let it drop. And part of letting it drop can be simply not to be accessible. We don't need to be checking our email all the time. We don't need to be available to everyone all the time. And the author suggests thinking of distraction differently. Very often we try to schedule some focus time. He suggests instead scheduling our distraction time, and that the rest of the time should be focus time. So when we decide that we're going to take a break and look at our phone or look at our email, we have decided that we are going to do it during this 20 minutes. As opposed to scheduling focused time, we should have more of a view that all of our time should be allocated as much as possible to focus or recovery time, not allowing distractions to creep in. And to me, it was an aha moment because it really changes the way that I viewed how I managed my calendar, how I managed the activities in a given day. And by scheduling distractions, it makes it easier for us to be less accessible to others, that we are spending or making a point of spending more of our time in an intentional way and making time for distractions, but really being specific about when we're willing to let distractions in, whether it be social media, email, or other people. And this idea really made me consider the impact of open work areas and how in an open work setting, distractions abound left, right, and center, but most of the knowledge workers in this day and age work in open environments, and how erosive this would be to our ability to take deep dives in what we need to produce on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I used to go in, when I worked in corporate Canada, I used to go in at 4 or 5 in the morning so that I could get a few hours of deep work, because I could not figure out how in the course of the regular day I could possibly get the real knowledge work I needed to get done. To me, it was an impossible task with interruptions on a regular basis. I did not understand how my colleagues, direct reports, or superiors could do it themselves. I needed that quiet time, and before anyone else showed up at the office was the best time for me to get what I called actual work done. Now, the short review of this book I've given you does not do it justice by any means. It is a very powerful book, a book that I want to refer back to on a regular basis, if only as a reminder of the kinds of practices and habits that I need to be the most effective version of myself. Now, I mentioned that the author had a lot of great references in this book, and that this book was a bit of a gateway drug to a lot of the themes presented within it. So let me give you these books that are quoted in Deep Work as recommendations in and of themselves. They are all excellent. First off, Wrapped by Winfred Gallagher, Peak by Anders Ericsson, Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and Technopoly by Neil Postman. Now, there are also other books that I think are in the same kind of area as Deep Work and that I would also highly recommend, and they are as follows. The Way We're Working Isn't Working by Tony Schwartz, which is also a book that I have reviewed via video here on Free to Pursue on YouTube. Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, The Power of No by James and Claudia Altucher, and Essentialism by Greg McKeown. The links for this book, the TED Talk, the blog post of Cal Newport's, and all the books I've referenced in this video will be available linked down below. For the written review of Cal Newport's Deep Work, please head over to freetopursue.com, or you can also see the review on rockstarfinance.com. The links to both are available down below. I thank you for your time in listening to this review today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you enjoyed the content in this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you like the content on Free to Pursue in general, I would appreciate if you would consider subscribing. Thanks for your time today, and see you in the next video. Take care.